Hey, have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Well, Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. And best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. I love it for the simple fact that it brings the sponsors to you. You don't have to search for them, and they distribute it to all the major platforms for you. So if you want to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start. Again, anchor.fm/START to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. And that's it. Let's go.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. Now tuned into the greatest.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Supreme Decisions Legal Minute podcast.
Supreme on the
and
track.
Today, I'm sitting outside and I'm enjoying this great weather, even though it's a little bit colder than I would like, because everybody knows I don't like cold weather. But today, this podcast is going to be a little bit cold. And the reason being is because I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I've talked about before in a little bit more detail. But the difference is going to be today is that today's conversation is going to be about excessive force. And today, I'm going to keep it easy. Because this all came to me about a week ago, believe it or not. And I was watching a young man on YouTube by the name of Tommy Sotomayor. Now, Mr. Sotomayor, he has been doing YouTube for a very long time. And he does a lot of news stories. But on this particular day, he decided that he was going to spotlight a few things that dealt with the police. And in this spotlight, he showed some, to say the least, some graphic stuff that he had found online, and of all places, YouTube. But one of the things that he pointed out was this young man, he was in cuffs. He was inside a holding cell. And he was inside a police department. And what occurred was this young man, while handcuffed, while sitting at a table, not being aggressive, not being smart, he just wasn't talking back because he chose to remain silent. He was exercised by, he didn't care what the police were saying to him. He was saying, hey, do your job. 2 of 3 police officers violently assaulted this young man while handcuffed, while in a police station, because he did not want to talk to them. I did a video with the El Paso Police Department where one of the police officers, while arresting this young man, while making up a charge of resisting, while making up statements of he's trying to assault us, or he tried to kick me, this young man told him, hey, you should have helped me with my investigation, and all you had to do was comply. Now, the reason this brought so much attention to me is because out of those 3 officers, not the El Paso, but the original one with Tommy Sotomayor, 1 officer was fired. And that was the officer that was doing the questioning. That was the initial officer that had placed his hands on this young man. A second officer resigned. That officer was the one that assisted in the physical altercation against this handcuffed young man. And the third officer was not even reprimanded. However, this young man decided to sue. Here's where it gets kind of tricky. Because he sued all 3 officers in their personal capacity. He attempted to sue the police department. his lawsuit against the police department was unsuccessful. And here's the easy of why. Whenever we're talking about suing an entity for the actions of their subordinates or their employees, it has to be written and. Keep in mind, I've always said the biggest words in law are if, and, or. It doesn't change. We've actually added a couple to the list, but the more often ones that you're going to see are if, and, or. And in this case, when you're suing an entity for the actions of their employees, there's this thing called if. It is written and, because there has to be a secondary act that goes along with what you are suing for. And in this secondary act, the police covered their own ass by firing one officer and the second officer resigning because it appeared to them that they did not tolerate that type of behavior. Now, the reason why the third officer, who did nothing, was also liable in that lawsuit is because he allowed that action to go on without saying anything. And remember, you do not have to experience actual harm in order for them to be liable. All they have to do is go along with or become an actor in concert, as long as they condone the actions of other officers. Remember, I constantly talk about how nobody has a problem with police. I refuse to believe that somebody wearing a uniform is a problem. The problem everybody has is bad policing. You put up the blue wall. You call it a brotherhood, but then you cannot reprimand your brother for the actions he or she is doing. You stand by idly and allow foolishness to happen. You stand by idly and allow foolishness to continue. You stand by idly and allow foolishness to escalate. This is what people have a problem with. This is why people dislike, automatically just come up with different issues for even dealing with police officers. Because I often hear the police apologists, well, if wait till something happens to you, and then guess who you're going to call? I'm going to call Smith & Wesson. Because last time I checked, that works. Because we got enough school shootings and mass shootings around this country to know that Smith & Wesson is working. Nobody's having an issue with the guns. We're having issue with those that are supposed to be protecting us and looking out for our well-being. And that brings us to this one case. I'm going to go into others, but this is the one that I actually want you to kind of get ready to sink your teeth into. And it's Graham v. Connor. It's a 1989 case. But the pretext of it is Graham v. Connor, 490 U.S. 386, 1989. And in essence, it's a Supreme Court case where the court determined that an objective reasonableness standard should apply to a civilian claim that law enforcement officials used excessive force in the course of making an arrest, an investigatory stop, or other seizure of his person. Now, when we're talking about the overview is something that a lot of people get misconstrued. And this is one of those easy ones to get misconstrued because there are a lot of things that are being said that kind of go against it. So here's where the breakdown comes in. I'm not sure if you remember, I did a video where I talk about reasonable. And when you're dealing with reasonable, when you're dealing with reasonable, most of the standards are not written. So when you're talking about excessive force, there are generally a lot of variables. The excessive force claims are the reason there are body cams. The excessive force claims are the reasons there are dash cams. The excessive force claims are the reason they will not turn over video. The excessive force claim is the reason why you have so many body cameras malfunctioning. The excessive force claim is the reason you have, in essence, officers actually being put in the line of fire in the first beginning. Because I'm going to give you a story. There's this young man that worked in the Richmond County Police Department. A lot of them knew him as The Rock. And the thing about The Rock, he was one of these guys because he had a little bit of celebrity. He was a little light-skinned dude. Had a nice little build on him. He lifted a little weight. You know, and he thought because women liked him, he could do whatever the hell it is he liked. He was one of those guys that would go out and literally fuck with people. Literally, that was his thing. He would go out and instigate situations because he wanted to fight. He wanted someone to interact with him. He wanted someone to engage with him. Now, the thing is, there was a time where The Rock couldn't go outside without wearing a bulletproof vest. There was a time where The Rock was not able to have a partner with him. There was a time that people took shots at him with his children. The Rock became a danger, not only to himself, but to everyone around him. The Rock was never reprimanded for his actions. His actions were always condoned and covered. There are others that were in the Richmond County Police Department that engaged in similar activities that were never reprimanded, that were never changed, that was never have a conversation with. And even so, there was another young man who was even killed by a quote-unquote suspect in what many believe was a drug deal going wrong. The problem is the drug dealer was a police officer. And what went wrong was he decided to exercise what he felt to believe his power or authority, and the quote-unquote suspect took his life. This police officer was then praised as a hero when in fact many people did not believe him to be such. Now, there are a lot of stories that go on around these things. Why? Because we're all trained to believe that police officers are good people. We're all trained and programmed to believe that police officers do the right thing. We're all trained to believe that most police officers are honest people, when in fact, what we know to be true is the exact opposite. Because we can just look at Baltimore, 55 officers in Philadelphia being released because of things that they're either saying or doing online. You're looking at these claims of officers planting drugs. You're looking at these people that are going out and impersonating these police officers and then going out and assaulting people. And even those that are pretending to be police officers are having issues covered up, because you're looking at even plainclothes police officers, off-duty police officers, pulling their gun on someone in a store for a pack of gum that they paid for. You're looking at a police officer that is tackling a woman in the Walmart parking lot because he believes that she stole something. We're looking at these police officers. And remember, I gave you the very definition of that thing called aggravated assault. And in the aggravated assault, each and every time a police officer pulls out their gun, that's an aggravated assault. You look at 2 Dallas-Fort Worth police officers that killed suspects. One during a wellness call that he never announced himself. They never turned on their sirens. They parked down the street and then gave this young woman less than a tenth of a second to respond to him holding his gun through her window. These are the things that fall under the excessive force, because we know for a fact the training is poor because it's done just for revenue. We know for a fact that they're generally hiring people and then creating scared cowards. And in that cowardism, we're expecting them to do brave things. Because the problem that I have, the simple problem I have, because to me it's simple. When you stop doing things for revenue and you train law enforcement to actually enforce law, it becomes a different game. And I actually had to stop big upping my city, because not only did I look at some of the things that were going on around, because yes, El Paso was the safest city up until the mass shooting on last year, but I look at the fact that why are there so little police officers that are visible here? Then I have conversations with guys that are police officers. I have conversations with people that have been accosted by police. And I've actually looked at one police officer in particular because he did something to someone that was actually close to me. The problem that I have is the actions of this officer is very, very, very predatory. And no one is correcting his behavior. His actions were displayed inside the El Paso County Jail. His actions were not corrected. He was not reprimanded. He's had multiple complaints, mostly by young women, because he's a young man that patrols near one of the clubs here in El Paso. He's doing things that are out of line, that are over the line, and no one is correcting his behavior. And the problem is because 95% of people don't want to fight back. You get into a place where 99% of the people are not confrontational. So behavior such as this is excused. And then when we're sitting up here and we're looking at things that are dealing with excessive force that has no true definition, why are nobody reviewing the tapes of this young man to see if he's crossing the line? Why is nobody seeing the actual unedited body camera footage of these people that are going on these wellness checks? Because there was a young woman who had a boyfriend lie on her. Police officers came to do a quote-unquote wellness check. The people that have called into these non-emergency lines, not 911, to a non-emergency line. Why are the police showing up with their guns drawn if they're checking to see if someone is not doing well? That's the question I have. Why is that okay when we know that is excessive? Because if my stomach is hurting, I've yet to see how a pistol helped that. I have yet to see how an automatic assault rifle helped my stomach hurting. I've yet to see how a pistol helped someone that was passed out on the floor. So if we know it doesn't help it, why are we allowing it to go forward? Why are we allowing so many calls to go pretty much unchecked? Why are we allowing things such as this to go back and forth into our pretty much communities? These are the same people that are around our children. These are the same people that are out and asking for respect when not doing something respectful. And then why are we not fighting back when we're looking at something we know it's wrong? Why? Because we're grown. We're able to read. We're able to understand. We're smart enough to see wrong. Why? Because one of my auntie's favorite lines was, "You know right from wrong." Well, if I know right from wrong, why do I allow wrong to keep going on? I'm going to say that one more time. If I know right from wrong, why do I allow wrong to keep going on? If I'm going to condone wrong, I can't complain about it. And I say that over and over and over and over and over and over again till it gets on my nerves. Because somebody has to say something. Somebody has to do something. And the thing is, Most people don't want to because they're afraid of retaliation. And if you don't believe me, there's a 2018 case where they talk about police officers retaliating. I'm looking at a case right now in Pleasanton, Texas, where the police officers and the district attorney is retaliating. Not because they want to do the right thing or want to catch an actual criminal. No, because they want to protect themselves and scare someone instead of saying, you know what, we screwed up. We sorry we messed up your life. We screwed up. But no, they actually want to come back with force. They want to do something to make sure that this person understands. But these are the good guys, right? These are the people you're trying to convince me are good. These are the people that you are convinced me are out for my best interest. These same people. Because the one thing I've always been told, been heard, and always say is you can't get a little bit pregnant. Either you're good or you're not. And if you're allowing stupid shit like this to go on and not fighting back, you're not. If you're looking at this and you're not fighting, you're telling them it's okay to fuck you over, then you're not, because you're condoning their actions. You're funding. You know what? We had an issue here in the U.S. where people talked about funding terrorism. If you're going out and you're paying a ticket and you know you didn't do anything wrong, you're funding terrorism. If you're getting beat up and you're not fighting back, you're funding terrorism. If you're doing these things and you know that it's not right, you're funding terrorism. You're enabling. And this is one of those cases where a lot of times when you're looking at them, on its surface, it appears to be one way. Because, like I said, it contradicts itself many times in its summation. But we know what the reasonableness standard is. Because at some point there still has to be some type of action on your behalf. And the easy fix is turn over the videotape. Because I had a lot of people get upset with me when I talked about a situation in, I believe it was Arkansas. Young man, he was talking with the police officer, and she talked to him. He didn't have a license on him, and he had went to the store to go get some burgers. He had his cousin in the car with him, and he was sitting there for about 10 minutes, and it was funny because I always tell people when the police officers do nothing wrong, they turn the body camera over quickly. In this case, it was kind of quick. I believe it was like a month after the issue had happened, and in doing so, this young man, he had went out. And after having this conversation, he gave the initial police officer, his name, address, and she was like, oh, you're actually right down the street. And she told him, hey, if you don't have any warrants, because you've been cooperative, I appreciate it, and because she knew him, I'm going to just follow y'all to the house. Just go straight to the house because the truck didn't have any registration. He would go, yeah, I know I didn't have any. And that was actually the first thing he told her. He was like, yeah, the truck ain't registered. And my license is at the house. My cousin wanted something to eat, and he bought me some burgers. So I just wanted to whip him down the street real quick because I didn't want him out here walking. And she was like, all right, that's cool. So got the information. Now, while she's at her car running his information, her partner comes up, and he immediately puts his hand on his gun. He then starts talking very aggressively to the passenger, who was a 15-year-old boy. I'm going to say that one more time. This grown-ass man, after his partner had control of the scene, everybody on the scene is relaxed. They're calm. Why? Because the initial officer did her job properly. Now, everything that was done was consensual to that point. Now, again, this grown-ass man began talking aggressively to a 15-year-old child. The child then began to fold his burger up. The driver then put his hamburger down. This officer jumps onto the side of the truck where these people are. and begins yelling. Now, keep in mind, they were calm. The young lady had already walked back to her car with the information she needed. She knew the man that was driving. She knew the man that was behind the wheel. Everything was cool. This officer instigated the entire situation. He jumps onto the vehicle. The guy says F this because he sees what's going on, because this police officer decided he was going to escalate the situation. He hits the gas. The police officer reaches in and pulls out, reaches into his holster, pulls his gun out because he already had his hand on his gun, and fired 3 shots at the driver, striking him once. Now, a lot of people had issue with me because my response was, that is an easy lawsuit. Because he created the danger. He created the situation. And people were like, well, no, the guy, he was running. He wasn't running until the officer created the situation. And then I had a lot of people, well, his life was in danger because he was hanging on the side of the truck. You cannot place your life in danger and then use that as exigent circumstances. Because even in Tennessee v. Gardner, which I'm actually quoting right now, they have to be using something other than the vehicle as a weapon. And, see how big that word just got? And has to be placing others in danger. There was nobody else there. He was not going in the direction of the officer that had taken his information. He didn't even turn in the direction where the officer that was hanging on to the truck was. He turned away from that officer. He had turned away physically in the truck, and he was shot in the back. He was going in the direction where there were no cars. There was nobody else. This young man was sued. He lost his case. He is still employed in Arkansas. Because when you're looking at the excessive force claims, when you're looking at these claims of this young man that was in police custody, I think we actually can go back to my favorite target. And we can talk about the young man that was stealing in Walmart in Arizona. And the police officer that took him in a back room, took his shirt off in front of a video camera, and began to beat this little boy up. Now keep in mind, they're not sitting up here assaulting grown men. They're beating up children, and people are okay with it. Why? Because police officers are being programmed into your head that they're good. And their behavior is being excused. Why? Because this young man, not only did he lose his lawsuit, he had to give up a few grand, but Walmart gave up a few grand. He also resigned so he can keep his pension. Now he's getting his job back because a little excessive force means nothing. Because if he's done that once, how many times has he gotten away with it? Because many of us know children. I've got a couple. 2, 3, 6, 7. And we know, especially as boys, they have to find out where the line is. Every time they do something, they get a little bit worse. Gets a little bit worse. Why? Because we know it. We know how close we can get to the line. We just don't know where it's at. We have to find that line. And this young man, he found the line. But how many times has he gotten away with it? How many times was his behavior excused? Why was it so difficult for anybody to prove this? Why is he not turning over videotape if he's doing the right thing? Now, actually, I'm gonna get a little deeper into this case because the Supreme Court held that determining the reasonableness of a seizure requires a careful balance of the nature and quality of the intrusion of the individual's Fourth Amendment rights or interests against the contravening governmental interests at stake. That is why they must articulate the crime. That is why they must ask permission to come in your house, even if they have a warrant, unless it's a no-knock warrant. And that requires a felony. That requires probable cause. That requires articulation. All of these things have to be present in order for your Fourth Amendment rights not to be violated. It'd be easy because I was about to say some other stuff. But anyway. And these things are many times not held up because 95% of people do not fight. My question is, are you part of that 95? Are you okay with giving up the right to be private for the most part? To not be intruded on? Because our Fourth Amendment jurisprudence has long recognized that the right to make an arrest or investigatory stop necessarily carries with it the right to use some degree of physical coercion or threat thereof to effect it. But keep in mind, an investigatory stop requires probable cause that a crime has been committed. At no point in there does it say you have to participate in it if they have not done something else. Even Hybel v. Nevada states that you don't have to give an ID until they articulate a crime. And what was that? Wren versus U.S. stated a traffic stop is not probable cause of a crime. It's not probable cause. It's an infraction. But these are the things they attempt to play on your psyche because they expect you not to know, even though they're going to hold you accountable as if you do know. I'm going to say that one more time. They expect you not to know because they're not telling you. However, they're going to hold you accountable for knowing because you're a grown-ass person. You're supposed to know. Why? Because you're supposed to know right from wrong. And then when you hold them accountable for the things that they've done, you're the problem. Because they're supposed to be able to get away with excessive force. You're not supposed to fight back. You're supposed to accept it. You're supposed to do what you're told. You're supposed to take this ass whooping and learn from it. Even though, what about Philando Castillo? What did he learn from his ass whooping? He complied. And he got shot 3 times in front of his wife and child. Even the police officer that shot him, his partner asked him, "Why did you shoot?" Do you know they did not sue that police officer, but they did get a check from the police department? I'm going to say that one more time. They did not sue that police officer, but they did sue the police department and got a check. The crazier part about this is the fact that this police officer showed that he was a coward, showed that he could not think under pressure, showed that even when told, even when giving instructions, he's not able to follow them himself. But yet he's being pushed by the police union to work again. And these are parts of those things. Because the test of reasonableness under the Fourth Amendment is not capable of precise definition or mechanical application. The test's proper application requires careful attention to the facts and circumstances of each case. This is why, when you're dealing with them, it is so important that you videotape every interaction. Every time you're sitting in a vehicle and you're stopped, you're introduced, you're entertaining the presence of a police officer, you better be fucking recording it. Most people don't even realize the reason people now have access to HD. I'm going to say it one more time. HD dash cams. Why everybody is encouraged to use their HD cell phones to record not only video but audio during interactions with police officers. Why you have things such as iCloud. Why you have these things on Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, where immediately after your live is shut down, it'll close out your account. So you can't immediately delete the video that you just uploaded. You actually have to go back in to delete these videos because these honorable people have been known to delete evidence. And we know because there's a growing number on the wrong side of the amount of video that's made available. Because I'm gonna give you a tee. I'm gonna give you a tee. Does anybody actually pay attention to the fact that the only reason we had video from the Amber Geiger incident was because somebody was outside videotaping? Because there was a lot of people that talked shit to me whenever I actually told them I was watching the live when it happened. The person that was on live, I was watching the live when it happened. Nobody paid attention. There was somebody downstairs that was videotaping her walking back and forth, that videotaped the paramedics. Those were the clips that we watched. We wasn't watching anything from the police. And what you also probably didn't realize was the person that had that Facebook page, their page was deleted. But these are good guys, right? They took the video from them, took bits and pieces from it. And then what happened? What? Oh, okay. These good guys tried to get rid of evidence. The problem was it was already live. It was already live. So now, when we're talking about these things, the reason they are in existence, the reason they are actually growing is simply because these are the mechanisms used to protect ourselves. The problem is most of us are not using them as the ammunition that they are set for. Because when we talked about aggravated assault, that definition is clear. When we talked about the time limit that police have to, quote unquote, stop you and investigate you, that's very clear. Because remember, I'm using the words clear. Why? Because it's clearly established. When we're talking about the fiduciary duty, that's clear. When we're talking about specific actions of when they are pulling out their guns and hollering and giving instructions, that's clear. When we talk about what they must do when they stop you, that's clear. Because I actually had one cop, it was the funniest shit ever. We were having an interaction, and we were having a conversation about when they must use the Miranda rights. And his thing was, only on certain arrests. I said, only on certain arrests does a person have rights? He goes, no, you know, everybody has the right to an attorney. And I asked him when. When? If you don't have to say it every arrest, when do you have to say it? He goes, well, that really doesn't matter because of this, that, and the third. And I cracked up laughing. I said, so what is it called when you're doing a stop on the side of the highway, since the Supreme Court stuff don't really matter because of blah, 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 blah? He goes, yeah, when we're conducting a Terry stop. And I busted out laughing. I said, why is it called a Terry stop? He goes, I don't know. And I could not stop laughing because this was the same idiot that told me the Supreme Court didn't matter while quoting a Supreme Court that stated why he had to do it. Literally, the Terry v. Ohio is the case why he has to do it. And he had no clue why he had to do it. While he was quoting to me why he had to do it. And yes, it sounded as stupid as I just said it. I just want you to understand that. I know the level of stupidity I had to go to even give you that. But that was the substance that was given. Because the only proof that's needed, which is also the only proof that's needed to not only convict, but it's the only proof needed to exonerate police officers. They won't turn over. Why? Because they know not enough people are going to stand up and fight back. And this what gives me the mindset. Because at one point, my brothers and I, we were considered, quote unquote, the 300. And many of us don't understand the story where you had the army. They went out to stop Xerxes, the god king. And instead of taking the entire army, right, they took less than 1%. They took 300. They took less than 1% of the men they had. But with that 300, they made some of the greatest noise. The problem is when you have the 5% that's going out here and that are fighting back, that are winning, that are doing the things necessary to make change, create change, show direction for change. The difference is how many of the 95% are going to come and fight when the 5% fail. I had to pause for dramatic effect because, again, these cases are not select. They're not individualized cases. They're cases that are generally dealt with through escalation. They're cases that are looked at as pretty much everyday business because that's what it is. When you're generating revenue, it's business. And when you're not fighting back, that means you're condoning those actions. And what we're faced with is, are we going to exercise due process? Or are we going to complain about the situation just because we can? Because here's the crux of this case that I want to get into. The court rejected the notion that the judiciary cause could use the due process clause instead of the Fourth Amendment in analyzing a excessive force claim, because the Fourth Amendment provides an explicit textual source of constitutional protection against this sort of physical intrusion, governmental conduct, intrusive governmental conduct. That amendment, not more generalized notion of substantive due process, must be the guide for analyzing these claims. And the reason I'm giving it to you like that, the reason I brought up Terry v. Ohio, because yes, that's the most used Fourth Amendment claim. That is also the guidelines for an investigatory stop. It also talks about the subjecting of one to felonious conditions prior to a conviction. And they're taught the lingo. They're not taught the law. So when we're going out here and we're pushing for these due process clause claims, and I'm going to say this, that's what a 1983 lawsuit is. It is a due process clause claim. Why I say valid, it is a valid cause of action. It's very specific in how it can be executed. It's very specific on how it can be prosecuted for the most part. Because when you're talking about an excessive force, you're talking about specifics of how one has been treated while in the care of police. That is why they don't want to show arrests. That is why they don't turn over video. That is why whenever you were looking at the Hobbs Act video, the Pleasanton police officer turned over the camera so he can come up with his own interpretation of it. But he has yet to turn over the videotape he said out of his own mouth that he was recording. But he's the good guy. I'm going to say that one more time. This police officer stopped a person without articulation, placed him in handcuffs without reason, turned over his camera so he could not videotape him, did not turn over his camera and video footage of the arrest, nor give provocation for the arrest. But he's the good guy because he showed up on the scene, performed an arrest, wanted it to be lawful, but because again, I'm going to give you something real quick. That arrest happened in June 2019. There have been multiple requests. There have been multiple notifications to this good officer. Were we 7, 8, almost 8 months later? This good officer hasn't turned over a police report. This good officer hasn't turned over any video that he said he was recording. And this good officer is looking for a way not to do what he's supposed to do. I'm going to say that one more time because that's the good officer that did that, that is doing that. That is part of a cover-up right now. That's the good officer. But at the same time, the person he did this to is fighting back. The person that he did this to is pressing forward. The person that he did this to is not allowing their intimidation tactics to have any effect on them. Because when you're moving forward, you're doing these things, you're fighting back, you're creating clearly established. You're taking away those options of harmless error. You're taking away these claims where they can be kicked out because your actions are showing otherwise. And I'm going to go deeper because the court explained that in a Fourth Amendment context, the reasonableness inquiry in an excessive force case is an objective one. The question is whether the officer's actions are objectively reasonable in the light of the facts and circumstances confronting them, without regard to their underlying intent or motive. The reason why you can't go to their intent and motive is because you have things where there are questions around them, such as Sandra Bland. You have things where you're giving these commands and they are unable to be followed, even if they were a contortionist, such as Daniel Shavers. But we are going after the wrong people. Instead of the person that's causing this action, we're going after the city. We're going after the department. No, because if John smacked me, guess who John gonna have to deal with? Because I'm going to smack the absolute dog shit out of John. I'm not going to go and smack John's friend. I'm not going, unless John's friend wants some of that business, then I'm going to give it to him. But I'm not going to go smack anybody other than John. Anybody else wants some, they can get it. Because understand that. Understand that. You have to stay focused on the person that created the issue. And then the one thing I love, the one thing I absolutely love, is the simple fact as the police officers, they're people too. They feel pressure as well. The one thing that happens, and it's also the one thing that I fell in love with whenever I was out here taking a Uzi to everything that I was doing, it was the fact that I went out here and I would start suing people. I would start suing these police officers in their individual capacity. In their individual capacity, they don't have the luxury of walking out here and having the police union behind them, because I'm not suing officer such and such. I'm suing such and such. Now, while he was on duty, he was officer. He had a fiduciary duty to me. But instead of performing that duty, he chose to do something that the state could not authorize him to do. So therefore, when he committed the act, he wasn't officer such and such. He was just such and such. That's one of the reasons we get a lot of stuff kicked out, because once they violate, they are no longer actors of the government or agents of the government. And we're still going after them as if they were. And then we're getting upset because when that happens, we're wondering why the case is being kicked out, because officer such and such has qualified immunity. Such and such does not have qualified immunity. Why? Because when he violated, he was no longer under qualified immunity. Willful acts and ignorance disqualifies them from qualified immunity, which is why the second they do it, they are no longer actors of the government, which is why when you're looking at these excessive force claims, they're not necessarily 1983 claims, because a 1983 claim comes when it is written and you have access to it because you know it's written. And they followed it to the letter, which is why whenever you have these stupid-ass claims that people or the cop has done something and their supervisor covered up, this is why you're able to sue their supervisors, because they're condoning the actions of their subordinates. But it all begins and ends with you standing up and fighting back for your rights, because nobody else can fight for you. Everybody can fight with you, but no one can fight for you. And that's that. I'm gonna get back on subject real quick, but I gotta get off, because right here, this is where I get a lot of people that contact me. A lot of people that contact me want me to fight for them. I can't care more about you than you do. Because during my racketeering trial, my grandmother asked me several times, why did I not get an attorney? Why don't you get an attorney? Why don't you just get somebody to represent you? And I told her, I said, Grandma, I have too much to lose, and nobody cares about me more than I care about me. And it showed, because one of the things a friend of mine tells me about is when he hears me talking and he listens to the podcast. I appreciate you. His name is Richard. Appreciate you, Richard. Get you a quick shout out. But he told me, he said, you know what, dude, there's a passion that's in your voice when you talk about certain instances. And I constantly bring up my RICO trial because there are certain things that come up that kind of relate to that. And in this instance, it's me caring about me. Nobody else is going to care more about me than I do. When you're contacting me for help, for guidance, that's all I can give you. I can fight with you. I can't fight for you. You have to stand on your own 2 feet. That's why you can't have a third-party claim. I think I just taught you something again. That's why you can't have a third-party claim, because nobody can fight for you. Everybody can fight with you. And many of the people that are calling, they're looking for a way out because they don't want to stand up. Many of the people that are standing in these courtrooms are too afraid of what they think they might lose. Because the acronym, false expectations appearing real, is real. Because as a man thinketh, so shall it be. Because what you place your mind on, you manifest. I'm going to say, what you place your mind on, you manifest. Because these are things, yeah, I got biblical on you real quick, but I want you to understand, it's real. Because for my holy people, this is why God told you to place your mind on higher things. Because it's not automatically there. It's automatically somewhere else. You have to do something with purpose. And just like I explained to a young lady a couple days ago, there's nothing more dangerous than a fool with a purpose. Sometimes you have to play the fool. You have to be that fool with a purpose. Just like I told this young man When he kept telling me, oh, well, nobody's going to take a traffic ticket to court. A dude took a window tint case to the Supreme Court. Why? Because he was a fool with a purpose. Turner v. Driver took his case to the Supreme Court. Why? Because he was a fool with a purpose. We're talking about right now. People are in the Supreme Court on how to wear their hair because they are fools with a purpose. They don't care about winning little battles. They're looking at the end of the war. They're looking to win the war. That is their purpose. That is their sole purpose. Because even when I talked about the book, The Purpose-Driven Life, you have to find your purpose. Does that mean your life ends? No, that's generally where your life begins. Because now I'm going to go Malcolm X, because if you won't stand for anything, you'll fall for it. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. These things are not just said. These things are not just beings. They're not just nice stuff to put on T-shirts. These are things that are actualities. If you want change, you have to become a part of the change. You have to be an effect to the change to get it. Because nobody's going to... Because, see, I don't know about you, but one of the things that everybody was telling me as I was growing up, nobody's going to give you anything. And if they give it to you, they're going to want something for it. And the things that many people are being given, they're being asked to give up something greater than what's being given. Because the one thing I do know about a bully, the one thing I do know about greed, if you ask me to give up one right and I become comfortable giving up one right, guess what they're getting ready to do? You're going to ask me to give up 2. Then you're going to ask me to give up 3. And then you're going to force me to give up 4, 5, and 6. And then the rest of them don't even matter because they're yours. Because I wouldn't fight. And I think that's why my father created what he did. I think that's why he looked at me the way he did. Because he understood that I'm finna create this monster. Because there's even a quote that I had, a friend of mine sent me. And I was like, you know what, this is perfect. Because there are times people say, dude, you have no tact. You just blunt as hell. Like, dude, why? Like, calm down. You have to spare somebody else's feelings. My response is, then your feelings, do what the fuck it is you want to do with them. But at the end of the day, the quote that was given to me was, why should I apologize for being a monster when no one apologized for creating me? I didn't apologize for who I am right now. Never have, never will. Because who apologized to me when Officer Darwood had his knee on my neck in the middle of a I-20? Who apologized to me when Sergeant Woods had his gun in the back of my head and I was sitting up there in DeKalb County? Who apologized to me when they created this monster? They created the dude that had nothing better to do other than study. They created the dude when they threw me down on the pavement, when they slammed me up against cars, when they told me what they were going to do to me and how they was going to. Who apologized to me for kicking me in my face? Who apologized to me for the DeKalb County stealing my jewelry? Who apologized? But now I'm not supposed to be upset. I'm not supposed to be angry. I'm not supposed to be willing to fight you back. I'm not supposed to be that. Because I'm supposed to apologize right now. And this is the thing that I tell people all the time. And that's why that quote for me was perfect. Because the apology is not mine to give. And at this point, you can go in and keep it because you don't mean it. Because I am all day Mr. Fuck your feelings. They're yours. You do what you want to with them. I'm not going to try to control you. But the one thing you're not going to do is sit up here and say, you know what? That bastard right there, he going to lie to you. That bastard right there going to hurt you. No, you don't fuck with me, I'm not going to fuck with you. You ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. I don't care if you like it or not. It is what it is. And the one thing I am going to be is happy. Because That's what I place my mindset on every day. Get up, be happy. Get up, do something happy. Do some joyful shit. And even sitting down and I look at this, I know that I was in the minority whenever I started fighting back. Because it's easy to go to any courtroom in any city and see 50 or 60 people that are unwilling to fight in a courtroom of 62. In a courtroom of 55. Majority of the people in there will not fight back. The majority of people in there will not ask for a trial. Most of these people will take a plea bargain. Most of these people will say, all right, it's okay. And those that ask for a trial, they become scared to death. Why? Because again, I got one of them nursery rhymes for you. Because sticks and stones may hurt your bones, but words will never hurt you. The problem is they are believing someone they think is a liar. They're believing someone they believe is untrustworthy. They're believing someone they believe is corrupt. Let that sink in. Or as my boy Tommy Sotomayor said, make that make sense. But at the end of the day, I'm going to keep going with this. I'm going to get back on task. But I want you to think about that. Or make that make sense. Right? They'll take the word of someone they believe is a liar. They'll take the word of someone that they believe is corrupt. They'll take the word of someone they believe is dishonest. They believe in their core they are dishonest. They're not right. They're going to lie to me. Well, I guess he's telling me the truth. Even after they see what they're doing is wrong. Even after your mom and dad tell you, because you know right from wrong. Even after you know it, it's written. You can exercise. It's tangible. That's another one that Tommy came up with that he used. It's tangible. But you still believe it. Now all of a sudden, none of that matters. What happened? Why are you no longer willing to fight? Why is all of a sudden this liar acceptable? Why all of a sudden these cases that you've learned and figured out how to apply, why all of a sudden they don't matter? Even though that's what this person that you're listening to is supposed to be going by, and you see clearly they're not, what happened? Because this is why we have such a rampant growth of police corruption, because no one's fighting back. Because they're looking at these words in something as simple as this police excessive force case and Graham v. Connor, and they're becoming discouraged because it says in there are no specificities, but still yet you can name 20 cases off the top of your head where it gives specificities within them. Because again, whenever you talk about application, that's when you begin to understand procedure. Because you only know through application that a police officer, unless there's a crime, can't get your ID. You only know through application that unless there's a crime, a police officer can't even tell you what to do or give you instructions. That's why they have to ask your permission for everything. When was the last time you had an authoritarian ask permission? Someone that truly has authority, when was the last time they had to ask permission to apply their authority? And I'm going to use Tommy one more time. Make that make sense. They truly have authority, but they're asking for your permission. But you're believing them and you know they're corrupt. But somewhere in there, their corruption is okay. You believe them to be liars, but at the same time, they're telling the truth. So basically, you're not supposed to believe something that you know for a fact that can be picked up in any library across the country. No, let's say any library across the country. But they want you to believe something that's only written down in their office. Something that you can verify any city, any state, any region across the country versus a book in an office. One book, one office. You believe they're corrupt, but all of a sudden now they're honest people. You're watching them constantly do wrong things, but they're the good guys. These are the things that I want you to actually kind of let it sink in. Because most of us want the simple things. We want our opportunity to pursue happiness. We want to be left alone. But no one gets to get the spoils without the sacrifice. If you're going to be in a confrontational system, an adversarial system, a combative system, you have to be willing to engage in combat. You have to be a willing adversary. You have to be willing to confront. Because as long as you are not, you are telling them that their actions are okay. You're giving effect to the fear or the false expectations that appear real. You're also living a lie. And you're okay with that. This is why I did so much of the things that dealt with the Matrix. Because throughout the movies, even the trilogy, they talked about how the Matrix itself was a lie. We know that most of the stuff that we're seeing, living, doing is a lie. We know that. But still yet, the closer we get to the truth, the fewer of us actually want it. Because in order to fight with the truth, you have to do just that. You have to be willing to fight. You have to be willing to stand up, throw down, and die for that shit. And for those that don't know what I just said, that's Tupac from the movie Juice. So if you want your respect, you have to stand up, throw down, and be willing to die for that shit. And in this case, if you want your freedom, if you want to be left alone, if you want to make sure your policing is done correctly, you have to stand up, throw down, and be willing to die for that shit. That citation is your contract to fight because you have to confront your accuser. If they're doing something outside the guidelines of what is allowed, you have to stand up and throw down and be willing to die for that shit. You have to be willing to go where nobody is willing to go. At some point, what are you willing to sacrifice? Do you really want it? Because is it free? Nope. It's going to cost you either time or it's going to cost you money or both. But I need you. Actually, I want you. I want you to sit down and think about, are you one of the people that'll hold somebody at McDonald's to a higher standard than you'll hold a police officer? I'm going to ask that one more time, but I'm going to ask it a little differently. Are you willing to have a child have more responsibility than you're giving a grown-ass person? Because if you are, you're okay with a grown-ass man tasing a 15-year-old that's not being aggressive. You're okay with a grown-ass man slamming a middle school child on his face because he doesn't want to do schoolwork. You're okay with a 13-year-old girl being kicked up against a rock at a mall that's not even involved in a fight. Even though that's what the police are there to investigate. You're okay with all that. Because if you're not fighting back, you're telling them those actions are okay. You're allowing those bouts of excessive force to go unpunished, to go unchecked, to have no recourse behind it. And now I'm gonna go ahead and start wrapping this up, because the one thing I tell everybody I hate is the fact that I don't want to give you guys the angry black guy. But when I talk about things such as this, because just to give you a little bit more. A friend of mine told me, "Hey man, you should watch The Hate You Give, the movie The Hate You Give." And that movie took me 3 days to watch, which I'm actually glad I was able to not go to the movie theater to watch it. But it took me 3 days to watch, because every instance in there I could relate to. The conversation with telling your children how to get home at the ages of 9 and 10 years old. I've had those conversations. I've had those conversations multiple times. And each interaction with the police, I've had those situations. I've dealt with those situations. And each time I seen it, the level of anger that I got was unbelievable. Because these things are unacceptable. I can't pay for things like that. I can't say those types of things are okay. I can't live with those things being done and unchecked. I can't continue moving forward if I know those behind me have to suffer that exact same thing. Just like the young lady, she spoke about how her boyfriend lied on her. The police came there with guns and one shot her. And then at the end of the day, now she doesn't trust police at all. Because they weren't there because she was aggressive. She was asleep. They came there because she hadn't talked to her boyfriend in 3 days, because they had broken up. A fact that he failed to mention. But instead of going to check on her to see if she was well, they came in with the guns drawn and ended up shooting her. Didn't kill her, but now she doesn't trust police. Because if you're going for a non-emergency, why are you employing emergency tactics? If you're going somewhere where there's no aggression, why are you coming in as the aggressor? Then here's the better question. Why are they being trained to fear everybody? Because again, I think everybody remembers me talking about a video where the police officer in South Carolina, in Columbia, South Carolina, Richland County, had stated at the end of the video, everybody is out to hurt him. Everybody has a gun or a weapon until they don't. If that's how you're doing your job, don't put that fucking uniform on. If they're training you to be a coward, don't put that uniform on, because that uniform is designed for people that are brave. That uniform is designed for those that truly want to go out and make a difference against crime, not be criminals. Understand that. And if you are one of those want to be good cops, that's when you go out there and correct the behavior of these fuckboys that you know are out here doing things they have no business doing. You don't allow them to sully your name. You don't allow them to sully your group. Just like that's part of your teammates. You don't allow your teammate to go out there and just run ruck shot. They go out there and make sure it's a job that they got to get done, because it's not them that's losing. It's all of you. Because one bad apple does spoil the bunch. Because this one guy went in and shot this young lady. Now she doesn't trust the entire bunch. I had a young woman that was arrested for an alleged DUI because she wouldn't give a police officer her phone number. Now she does, because of the treatment of this officer, she doesn't trust any police officers. Understand that. Because of the treatment of one, many of them aren't trusted. When I spoke about The Rock, this dude, he got to the point to where he could not be around his children for fear of someone taking his life. He couldn't go back and forth out in the public without wearing a vest because of his actions, and no one still corrected it. I have a problem with that. And when we're looking at these are the times to bite down on your mouthpiece. Dig into the ground and push with everything you got. This is the time to fight. If there's ever a time, it's now. And lastly, after having established the proper framework for excessive force claims, the court explained that the Court of Appeals had applied a test that focused on an officer's subjective motivations rather than whether he had an objective, unreasonable amount of force. The court then reversed the Court of Appeals judgment and remanded the case for reconsideration that used the proper Fourth Amendment standard. So again, it throws it back to Terry v. Ohio. And understanding the simplicity of it. When you're sitting up here and you're looking for something, sometimes we make situations more complex than necessary. Because when you're looking at what they're doing, if there's an issue, you need to not only allow them to cover their ass, but you need to look to cover yours. If you are injured in custody, you need that paperwork, because that gives you time, that gives you dates, that gives you injuries, that gives you officers involved. When you have medical records, when you go to the hospital, you are the one that's privy to your medical records. Why? Because it gives you specificities of the injuries, causation of those injuries. It can be something as simple as handcuffs too damn tight. And I actually know a lot about that because I'm not a small dude, so they can't just put these old regular punk ass handcuffs on me. They got to put real handcuffs on me. They got damn near go get 2 tire rims or something, you know. But yeah, I'm not a small guy, so it's easy for them to put these small ass handcuffs, these regular person handcuffs on me, and they be too tight. That's very possible. Even when you're looking at the situation with Eric Gardner and his family, their case was dismissed because, again, things as simple as verbiage, how you're suing, makes a determination on if you're able to sue. So keep all of that in mind when you're setting forth and moving with your case and you're understanding what the next levels are. Everything has a place. Everything has a process. But everything also requires confrontation and you fighting back. So, line upon line, precept upon precept, the fight begins with you. It also ends with you. And that's all I got for today. I appreciate you guys. Keep the donations coming. Apple Pay, Venmo, Cash App, Google Pay, PayPal, and Zelle. And for this podcast, become a monthly supporter. I appreciate it. Love you guys. Until next time.
The shaking colossus.
I'm going to show you how great I am.